All right, good afternoon. We'll try to, Chris, just warning, no quiz today, so you can go back to sleep, exactly. We'll try to go as quickly as possible, but I do have a lot of stuff here for you. I'm sure you got some questions, and then we have the President of the Security Council, and that is Ambassador Leonor Zalabata, the permanent representative of Colombia to the United Nations, and the President of the Security Council for the month of June. She'll be here to brief you on the Council's program of work. It'll be an in-person briefing only, so if you want to ask questions, you have to stay seated and in the room. Today in Rome at the World Food Program, it is Transition Day as Cindy McCain takes leave of her post as Executive Director, and Carl Skau will take over as the Acting Executive Director. And on this day, I just want to, on behalf of the Secretary General, express his deep appreciation to Ms. Cindy McCain for her dedicated service as she steps down from her role as Executive Director of the World Food Program. Under her leadership, WFP became leaner, it became faster and more agile in responding to global crises. She strengthened accountability, fostered innovation, and advanced humanitarian diplomacy while sustaining life-saving operations reaching nearly 100 million people each year. Her tenure also helped secure new sources of funding, expand critical partnerships, and prioritize safety and well-being of staff and beneficiaries worldwide. The Secretary General is grateful for her steadfast commitment to the fight against global hunger and malnutrition. He wishes her all the very best in the future. The Secretary General welcomes Carl Skau as Acting Executive Director of the World Food Program. Mr. Skau served as WFP's Deputy Executive Director and Chief Operating Officer since May 2023. He assumes his responsibilities at a critical moment when more than 360 million people worldwide face acute food insecurity. The process of identifying a new WFP Executive Director, a process that is run jointly by the Secretary General and the Director General of the Food and Agricultural Organization, will now get underway. This morning, the Secretary General presented his report on the implementation of the Quadrennial Comprehensive Policy Review to ECOSOC's operational activities for the development segment. The Secretary General noted that the report reflects a shared journey of nearly a decade. Together with the strong support and guidance of member states, colleagues across the system, he said, we have reshaped how we operate. The Secretary General pointed out that the UN development system today is more coherent, it is more accountable, and it is more closely aligned with national priorities as it never has been before. But with less than 1,700 days until the 2030 deadlines of the Sustainable Development Goals, the Secretary General warned that many countries face growing pressures and that this is a defining moment. His full remarks were shared with you, and the full report on the QCPR is available on ECOSOC's website. And this afternoon, the Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, in her role as chair of the UN Sustainable Development Group, will present her report on development coordination for ECOSOC's Operational Activities Development segment, complementing the Secretary General's landmark report delivered this morning. Together, these two documents tell a story of transformation. Since 2019, the reinvigorated resident coordinator system has made the UN more coherent, more efficient, and more aligned with national priorities. Recognition of the resident coordinators as effective entry points of the UN system has surged from 62 to 90% since the reform was launched. The UN development system delivered in 2025, 121 million people were reached with food assistance, 191 million children were vaccinated against measles, often in warlike conditions. Social protection was extended to 84 million people, and over 500 million more people were covered by essential health services since 2018. The Deputy Secretary General's full report, including the interactive session, is also available on the Development Coordination Office's website. Also this morning, the Secretary General had a video message to the biennial meeting of states on the program of action of small arms and light weapons. He told participants that for 25 years, this program has been a cornerstone of global disarmament and peace efforts. But he added, our world has fundamentally changed over the last quarter century, and new threats are rapidly emerging, including 3D printed arms, untraceable ghost guns circulating on the black market. Diversions of the focus of this year's meeting remains a primary method of acquiring weapons that fuel terrorism, crime, and gender-based violence while killing peacekeepers and blocking humanitarian access. Using the program of action as a base, the Secretary General called on countries to act together to end this scourge and to ensure the program of action is fit for today's challenges. Moving to the news in Lebanon, I can tell you that we are deeply alarmed by the escalation in military activities across southern Lebanon and beyond. Israeli warnings of imminent strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs are deeply concerning and have heightened fear and uncertainty among the population in Lebanon. We reiterate that civilians and civilian infrastructure must not be targeted. We urge all actors to respect the cessation of hostilities and avoid further escalation. We condemn all the loss of civilian lives. There is no alternative to a diplomatic solution to break this cycle of violence and to achieve sustainable stability on both sides of the blue line. The U.S.-sponsored Lebanon-Israel negotiations resuming tomorrow must be given a real chance to succeed. The Special Coordinator for Lebanon, Janine Hennis-Plasschaert, continues to engage all parties to de-escalate tensions, reinforce commitments to the cessation of hostilities that had been agreed to, and advance practical confidence-building measures. Later today, the Security Council will convene an emergency session at the request of France to address the situation in Lebanon. They will be briefed on behalf of the Secretary by Martha Poby, our Assistant Secretary General for Africa. She will brief on behalf of both the Department of Political and Peace Building. On behalf of the Department of Political and Peace Building Affairs, and underscore the above messages. She's also expected to reiterate that the Lebanese armed forces are the only legitimate armed force in Lebanon, and to continue calling for increased international support for the Lebanese armed forces and other state security institutions to enable them to assume their responsibilities to ensure security across all of Lebanon's territory. Meanwhile, on the ground in the south, our UNIFIL peacekeepers are increasingly concerned by the continued escalation. Yesterday, they recorded 744 trajectories, including 683 attributed to the IDF, with the remainders attributed to non-state armed groups. From midnight to 4 p.m. local time today, 400 trajectories were detected, 380 for the IDF and 22 non-state actors, as well as 12 airstrikes and 59 airspace violations of Lebanese airspace. UNIFIL peacekeepers are observing also intensive IDF air and ground operations across the area of operations. Over the weekends, they reported airstrikes in Sector West and East. Local roads were also targeted in some areas. We recall once again that civilian infrastructure, including road networks, must be protected at all times in line with international humanitarian law. Yesterday saw also a significant surge in IDF indirect fire, including artillery, mortars, and rockets across the area of operations. Fire by non-state actors was also recorded in Sector East. The mission also observed notable IDF movements along the routes leading towards the Beaufort Castle, which is beyond UNIFIL's area of operations. And just to flag that earlier today, the Undersecretary General for Peace Operations and the UNIFIL commander, Major General Abanyada, briefed UNIFIL troop contributing countries, including on force protection measures. And on the options for the future implementation of Security Council Resolution 1701, the Secretary General's letter to the Security Council is expected to be delivered a bit later on today. Meanwhile, on the humanitarian side, our colleagues are witnessing heavily congested roads in various areas of Lebanon as families flee with the belongings following renewed Israeli evacuation orders and threats of strikes on southern Lebanon and on the southern suburbs of Beirut. Collective shelters in Tyre and Saida are reportedly full, with scores of people reportedly trying to shelter in open areas. And in Beirut's southern suburb, UNHCR tells us that people are leaving by car, motorcycle, and on foot, carrying only essentials as they seek safety, many returning to already overcrowded shelters, mainly within Beirut. UNHCR remains on the ground supporting government-led emergency response. Since the beginning of the conflict in early March, UNHCR and its partners have reached hundreds of thousands of people across Lebanon with protection services, emergency cash assistance, shelter support, and other types of relief, especially for families enduring repeated displacement and trauma. But as displacement continues and needs grow, sustained support remains critical. More people are likely to be forced to leave the areas where they're currently sheltering in the coming hours and days if the scale of insecurity persists. And we are concerned that large numbers of people are once again being forced to flee under intolerable conditions. The scale and lack of clarity of the evacuation orders issued by Israel are causing panic and distress, forcing families to make very difficult choices. Over the weekend, the Lebanese Ministry of Public Health said at least 88 people were reportedly killed. Attacks affecting healthcare continue to be reported. An airstrike near Hiram Hospital close to Tyre reportedly injured at least 13 staff members and damaged the facility. According to the World Health Organization, 5 attacks on healthcare were recorded in the last 3 days, resulting in 1 health worker reportedly killed and 19 injured. International humanitarian law is clear. Civilians, including health workers and including first responders, must be protected. Authorities and our humanitarian partners are coordinating response efforts to growing needs. For its part, the World Food Program is rapidly scaling up its response nationwide, but the situation remains fragile. On average, WFP has supported close to 150,000 people per day since March 2nd, but ongoing daily bombardments and large-scale displacement are constraining the delivery of critical assistance, particularly in hard-to-reach areas. And just to note, there will be a launch on Friday in Geneva of the revised flash appeal for Lebanon, launched jointly with the government, and that is an effort to scale up humanitarian assistance over the next 3 months. As you'll recall, the Secretary General launched the $308.3 million flash appeal while he was visiting Beirut in March. Now the needs are significantly greater, as you can easily imagine. And turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs report that yesterday an airstrike hit the rooftop of a UN school building in Nuseirat in Gaza, which is used to shelter displaced families, resulting in damage. Luckily, no injuries were reported. Meanwhile, Zikim crossing will remain closed this week for a second week, leaving only the Karim Shalom, Karim Abu Salam crossing as the only entry point for cargo that we can use. In the West Bank, OCHA reports that yesterday, Palestinian trying to cross the Israeli barrier into East Jerusalem, reportedly in search of job opportunities, was shot and killed. Since October 2023, when the authorities revoked and suspended most permits issued to Palestinians to access East Jerusalem and Israel for work and other purposes, OCHA has documented the killings of 17 Palestinians and the injury of 290 others who were reportedly attempting to cross the barrier. And that is as of May 11th, We saw reports yesterday of what is described of a ramming attack that injured 2 Israeli girls, in which Israeli forces killed Palestinian drivers. We remind all parties that civilians must always be protected, and in law enforcement context, lethal force must be a last resort. Perpetrators of these attacks must be held to account. And turning to Sudan, I can tell you that we're deeply concerned by reports that dozens of civilians were killed over the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Adha, as violence further continues to escalate across parts of the Kordofan and Darfur regions. And we condemn all of these civilian killings unequivocally. Our humanitarian colleagues say that in North Kordofan state, clashes in Bara reportedly killed at least a dozen civilians, forced families to flee their homes, and increased already acute humanitarian needs for this population. In South Kordofan, the International Organization for Migration says more than 2,200 people were reportedly forced to move in search of safety in recent days. And in West Kordofan, local sources report that a drone strike in Kadam area killed at least 8 civilians and injured many others. While in central Darfur state, at least 10 people, including 3 children, were reportedly killed in a drone strike on the town of Dukun on Saturday. Intercommunal violence in central and south Darfur states has reportedly caused additional casualties and additional displacement, forcing families to flee across the border into Chad. The escalating insecurity also disrupting humanitarian operations. In central Darfur, for example, humanitarian activities serving approximately 21,000 people had to be suspended following clashes. At the same time, a suspected cholera outbreak in West Kordofan continues to spread, with more than 300 suspected cases and 77 reported deaths recorded as of yesterday. Our partners are responding but are constrained by shortages of critical supplies and resources. And as a reminder, in March, authorities declared an end to the countrywide cholera outbreak involving more than 124,000 cases and more than 3,500 deaths. The risk of cholera and other waterborne diseases will likely increase during the rainy season, which begins this month, and as attacks on essential infrastructure make it even more difficult to access clean water for people who so desperately need it. We continue to call on all the parties to protect civilians and civilian infrastructure and to facilitate humanitarian access. We also urgently need more funding. Nearly halfway through the year, we've only received 22% of the $2.9 billion that is needed for our humanitarian appeal. Back on this hemisphere, regarding Haiti, our OCHA colleagues point out that armed attacks in the Department of Artibonite have triggered new displacements and put additional pressures on already very vulnerable communities in the area. According to the International Organization for Migration, more than 1,100 people were displaced following violence on May 26 in the commune of Petite Rivière de Bayonne. Those who fled have sought refuge with host families within the city of Gonaïves, further straining threadbare resources available in these communities. Many of those who fled the violence last week have been displaced repeatedly. As we can imagine, or just try to imagine, they need shelter, food, water, but they also need health care. They need psychosocial support and protection services, including for survivors of gender-based violence. And we've told you repeatedly the horrific situation regarding that in Haiti. While we and our humanitarian partners continue to respond under challenging conditions, the pace and the scale of needs are rising rapidly. Also, turning to Nicaragua, I can tell you that the Secretary General is saddened by reports of the deaths in custody in Nicaragua of Mr. Brooklyn Rivera and extends his condolences to Mr. Rivera's family and the Mosquito community. The Secretary General reiterates the need to respect human rights in Nicaragua, including due process and humane treatment in detention, and calls for a prompt and impartial and transparent investigation into the circumstances surrounding Mr. Rivera's death. Also, just a programming note, 3 p.m. this afternoon, there'll be a Security Council meeting on threats to international peace and security that was requested by the Permanent Mission of Romania. For our part, Kayoko Goto, Director of the Europe and Central Asia Division of Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs, will brief Council members. Also want to flag 4 new resident coordinators. The Secretary General has appointed Nicolas Mient of Germany as the new UN resident coordinator in Malaysia, Igor Garafulic of Chile as resident coordinator in Brazil, Jutta Hinkanen of Finland as resident coordinator in Mauritania, and Rosemary Kalapurakal of India as resident coordinator in Zimbabwe. Mr. Mint's appointment is effective 31 May, while others took up their posts today. All with decades of experience across development, humanitarian, and leadership roles. They will serve as the Secretary General's representative on development at the country level, leading the country teams and coordinating system-wide support for nationally led efforts to advance the SDGs. Full biographies are available online, and I hope I admire your enthusiasm, but I have a message for my 3 children because today is Global Day of Parents. This year's theme, Together for Parents, highlights the vital role of parents and caregivers play in raising children and building stronger communities, creating supportive family environments where children can fully develop their personalities and well-being. You were clearly an eager child, so please, go
Thank
ahead.
you. I have 3 children too. Thank you for reminding me. On WFP, what is the selection process, how it looks like to select?
Selection process.
Let me finish the question, so much
Okay,
better
I thought
for
that
you.
was the question.
No,
Go ahead.
this is the beginning of the question. And how many candidates so far, and if you can also tell us about the conversation last month between Mr. Marco Rubio and Mr. Dujarric about the same subject. Thank you.
Yeah, as we said publicly, and I think the State Department said publicly, the Secretary General and the Secretary of State spoke about a number of issues, notably about the leadership in WFP, and the Secretary General explained to the Secretary of State the process for naming the new executive director, which involves, it's a joint process run by the Secretary General and the Director General of the Food and Agricultural Organization. It is now getting underway, as we never share short lists of candidates for these senior appointments, and we will not in this case. Edie.
Thank you, Steph. With the latest escalation in military action between Iran and the United States, threatening the ceasefire and talks, does the Secretary General have any message?
The message is one of restraint. The message is to calling on both the Islamic Republic of Iran and the United States to redouble their efforts at diplomacy. Again, under the very helpful work done by Pakistan, as well as Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt, and Qatar. Gabriel.
Thanks, Steph. A question on the afternoon Security Council meeting on Lebanon. Why isn't Janine Hatches-Plasher briefing the Council?
I don't know. I mean, often this was done at the very last minute, maybe given the time difference. But I mean, Ms. Pobey will speak on behalf of the
Fair
whole
enough.
UN system.
Fair enough. And separately on Iran, Gaza, and Lebanon, three separate conflicts, somewhat interrelated. Does the Secretary General think any of those three conflicts are headed in the right trajectory at this moment?
Well, I mean, clearly, I think from facts on the ground, they're not heading in the right direction, and it is yet another reason to redouble diplomatic efforts.
Does he think all three are interrelated?
Look, they're all, I mean, it is Parents' Day, right? So what's that song about the thigh bone being connected to the leg bone? Everything is interconnected. Madame.
Thank you, Stéphane. Since the Secretary General launched the 308...
Your microphone closer to your mouth, sorry.
Since the Secretary General launched the 308.3 million flash appeal in March, what has been the response from donors and international community? Is it sufficient to meet the growing humanitarian needs now?
No, it is not sufficient because the needs have gotten bigger. We did not reach the full number of what we wanted in the appeal. The exact numbers are up on the OCHA website, but given since March and today the situation has gotten worse, we need to extend the appeal.
Following, the Secretary General is still in contact, daily contact.
Your microphone closer, sorry.
Secretary General, is it still in contact with the President or the Prime Minister of Lebanon?
I mean, the UN remains in close contact with the whole leadership in Lebanon. Abdelhamid.
Secretary General.
Thank you.
Yes, no, and his team, and he does. I don't have any, contact with the last 48 hours. But through Ms. Janine Plasser-Hachert, and he also remains in contact.
Yeah, on Lebanon. You see the Israeli escalation has went beyond what it could be called self-defense or trying to just attack Hezbollah. They crossed the Litani River to the north. They attacked Beirut. They attacked Saida. They attacked Sayir. They destroyed some historical sites in Lebanon. Now, my question, do the Lebanese people have the right to resist those invaders and occupiers?
Look, the most important thing is for the state of Lebanon, the Lebanese armed forces, and state security services to have the monopoly of arms, like in any other country, in order to protect their own borders. Yes, Fethi.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes.
If this rule is evident, then all of Africa would be still under colonialism. People fight when they are invaded. Why not Lebanon?
I will leave the historical analysis to you, sir. Yes, Fit.
Thank you, Steph. With regard to Sudan, the forgotten war,
Oh, it's not forgotten here.
well, to a certain extent, it's less in focus than other armed conflicts around the world. What's the latest from the special representative of the Secretary General, and to what extent are we going to go through this vicious circle and very tight language describing the situation without naming names who are fueling the dispute?
I think, well, you know, there have been various reports to the Security Council on that. I think the Secretary General has been very clear about calling for all outside actors to stop getting involved in a negative way in Sudan, supporting either the government or the rapid support forces. What outside actors can do best would be to support the peace process, the coordinated peace process involving various regional organizations, involving the UN through Pekka Haavisto, and people should work in concert for peace and not to flood the country with more weapons.
Any chance to have the special representative for a video briefing?
Yeah, I mean, he's based in Addis, but as soon as we have something for him to say or he wishes to express himself, we will bring him in either in person or virtually.
Thank you.
Okay, I will go to our, sorry. I will go to Alex, who's also probably precocious child.
I have a quick
waving his
question
arms about.
on money. Could you please remind us when the United Nations is expected to run out of cash without the payments from the United States and China? I guess it was mid-August or something?
There's no hard date for the doomsday scenario. We did receive a substantial payment, partial payment from the People's Republic of China last week of about $800 million, which helps. But we call on all member states to meet their obligations, whether it's a budget for this year or their arrears.
Did you say 800?
$800 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, sir.
How much does the U.S. owe at this juncture?
It's, in terms of the regular budget, I think just under $2 billion, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, we'll go to Abu Sufyan online, and then I think our Colombian colleagues are here.
Thank you, Stéphane. UK government seized 250 million pound in Britain belonging to Bangladeshi nationals since June 2025, following the report of corruption by former
Sorry,
regime
Abu
Bangladesh
Sufyan, I didn't understand. If you could speak a little slower, because I didn't understand the premise of your question.
Okay. UK government seized 250 million pound in Britain belonging to Bangladeshi nationals since June 2025, following the report of corruption by former regime Bangladesh Awami League. Financial Times, Al Jazeera and other outlets made many stories on corruption. Last Wednesday, a court of Cyprus also pledges €8 billion of a businessman. His name is Saiful Alam, affiliated with former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. On the other hand, Bangladesh new elected government facing a big challenge due to this kind of corruption and money laundering.
Yes. You've stated some facts, but what is your question?
Yes, to support Bangladesh economic stability, will the UN Secretary General urge to the countries to cooperate Bangladesh government to bring this money back to Bangladesh?
Look, the issue of illicit gains having flown out of various member states is a very important one. It's one that impedes development, and we encourage international cooperation to ensure that monies that belong to peoples are returned to those countries. On that note, yes, please, go ahead.
According to UN fact-finding mission, 1,400 people were killed in July uprising in 2024. Bangladesh fallen regime claiming that the report is false. And Indian media saying that convicted Sheikh Hasina sent a letter to UN describing the misinformation in that report. What's your position on that?
Well, the report was issued by our colleagues in the Human Rights Office, and we have no reason to question it. Thank you.